When the CEO laid eyes on my resignation letter, he summoned me into his office. His face was etched with confusion as he asked me why I was still dissatisfied, pointing out that I had just received a year-end bonus of $600,000. I stared back at him expressionlessly, telling him there was actually only $600 left in my account. Scowl creased the CEO's brow as he immediately called the director of finance on speakerphone right in front of me. A sycophantic voice came through the line explaining that $599,400 had been transferred to the CEO's wife's account and that he had covered his tracks perfectly. The CEO's face turned a sickly shade of green in an instant. When Benjamin called me into his office, my resignation letter was already sitting on his massive mahogany desk. I tapped his index finger against the heavy paper. His eyes shifted from the document to my face, clouded with genuine confusion. Natalie, didn't the year-end bonuses just go out $600,000? You got the highest payout in the entire company. What exactly are you dissatisfied with? I stood perfectly straight, keeping my eyes locked on his $600,000. There are exactly $600 in my account. The confusion on Benjamin's face instantly warped into a deep, aggressive scowl. He snatched his phone off the desk and dialed the director of finance. The moment the call connected, Benjamin hit the speaker button. Andrew's signature sycophantic voice immediately echoed through the quiet office. "Mr. Carter, rest assured it is all handled. That $599,400 has been transferred directly into your wife's private account. Down to the exact cent, made sure the books are squeaky clean, completely untraceable." The air in the office turned to solid concrete. I watched Benjamin's face transition from bewildered to horrified and finally to a sickly ash and green on the other end of the line. Andrew kept talking, completely oblivious. "Honestly, sir, your wife had a great point. A young girl like Natalie might get reckless with that kind of cash. Having the company safeguard the bulk of it is really for her own good. It was a brilliant move, don't you think?" "Shut up." Benjamin forced the two words through his teeth. His voice dripped with absolute zero temperatures. He slammed his finger onto the end call button. The office plunged back into a suffocating silence. I remained standing there, my expression completely blank, as if I were watching a movie that had nothing to do with me. The truth was, I was waiting for Benjamin to give me an explanation, or rather, waiting for him to justify this absolute train wreck to himself. His chest heaved. He was practically vibrating with rage. It took him a full 30 seconds to look up at me. The usually sharp, composed eyes of the CEO were currently caught in a violent storm. He wasn't just looking at me, he was looking right through me, realizing something incredibly ugly about his own life. "When did you find out?" he asked. His voice sounded like cracked glass. "When the bank notification popped up on my lock screen," I replied. My tone was flat. $600. At first, I thought payroll had a glitch in the software. So, I pulled up my official pay stub. It clearly stated my year-end bonus was $600,000. Benjamin squeezed his eyes shut, fighting a losing battle to keep his composure. "And your first instinct was to just quit?" "Yes, without even asking me about it." A hint of accusation bled into his tone. "Mr. Carter." I finally used his formal title. "I have bled for Apex Tech for 5 years. I climbed from an intern to the director of operations. I know for a fact that I have earned every single penny this company has ever paid me. I trusted the corporate structure here. I trusted you. But I do not trust a financial department that can magically turn a $600,000 bonus into $600. That is not a glitch. That is an insult." I spoke calmly. No tears, no screaming, just cold, hard facts. Benjamin fell silent. He knew damn well it wasn't a glitch. Andrew had spelled it out perfectly on the speakerphone. "Transfer to your wife's account." He just didn't want to believe it. He couldn't fathom that the elegant, highly educated, picture-perfect woman he married would go behind his back to pull off something so incredibly cheap, stealing an employee's bonus, a massive six-figure sum. That wasn't just simple greed. That was actively taking a sledgehammer to the foundation of his company. He took a deep breath and picked up his phone again. This time his thumb hovered over the screen. He hesitated. I knew exactly who he was about to call Rebecca, his wife. I watched him quietly. I didn't rush him. I didn't interrupt. He had to rip this band-aid off himself. Finally, his jaw tightened and he pressed the call button. Speakerphone again. The phone rang twice before connecting. A voice sweet enough to cause cavities drifted out of the speaker. Hey, honey, you're calling early today. Miss me already? It was Rebecca. I lowered my gaze, hiding the ice in my eyes. This was the exact same voice that had called me just a few days ago, hissing, Natalie, don't push your luck. Benjamin pays you to be a worker bee, not to bleed him dry. That $600 is your phone stipend for the month. Learn your place. Benjamin swallowed hard. Rebecca, he started, his vocal cords tight, I might need to ask you something. Ask away, babe. What's going on? She sounded genuinely cheerful. What happened to Natalie's year-end bonus? He articulated every single syllable. There was a microsecond of dead silence on the other end of the line. It was incredibly brief, almost imperceptible, but both Benjamin and I caught it. Natalie, Rebecca's voice chimed back in. She had dialed up the innocent confusion to an award-winning level. Her bonus? How would I know anything about that, honey? You know I never interfere with your corporate stuff. Her voice was soft, but it wrapped around Benjamin's nerves like a venomous snake. I noticed Benjamin's knuckles turning bone white as he gripped his phone. Andrew just told me he wired a massive sum of money into your private account. Benjamin's voice was dropping an octave, desperately trying to hold on to his dignity. Money? Oh. Rebecca dragged out the vowel, pretending to search her memory. Right. I remember now. Andrew did wire me some funds. He mentioned the company had some tricky, off-the-books accounting to deal with. I just needed to park the cash in my account temporarily for liquidity. Don't worry, honey. I've got it tucked away safe and sound. Does the company need it back right now? I can wire it over immediately. It was a flawless performance, bulletproof. I painted herself as the ultimate supportive wife, quietly handling her husband's dirty corporate laundry behind the scenes. If Benjamin hadn't just heard Andrew groveling on speakerphone 5 minutes ago, he probably would have bought the lie. But right now, her sweet words sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Tricky off-the-books accounting. Benjamin repeated her words, the sarcasm practically dripping onto the desk. Rebecca, do you honestly think I am an idiot? The venomous tongue clearly shocked her. Honey, what is wrong with you? Why are you talking to me like this? She expertly pivoted to playing the victim. Is Natalie in the room with you? She suddenly switched targets, aiming straight for my throat. Babe, do not listen to a word that manipulative says. You know exactly what she's trying to do. She is just a pretty, young subordinate who constantly flaunts herself in your office. She's desperate to sleep her way to the top. Did she come crying to you saying I bullied her? I swear to God, Benjamin, I know how hard it is for a young girl to make it in the city. I've always gone out of my way to look out for her. How could she invent such disgusting lies about me? Rebecca's voice escalated into a hysterical, tearful pitch. Her ability to completely rewrite reality made the air in the office feel toxic. Benjamin looked physically ill. He stared at me, his eyes swirling with a chaotic mess of emotions, anger, doubt, the sheer agony of being betrayed by his own family. I knew what was happening in his head. He was caught in a psychological meat grinder. On one side, his top executive, the woman who had single-handedly secured millions in revenue for his firm. On the other side, the woman who shared his bed. Human nature dictates that people want to believe the ones they sleep next to. Subconsciously, he was trying to find a way to make Rebecca the victim and Natalie homewrecker. It was the oldest, cheapest trick in the corporate playbook. The jealous wife claiming the female employee is a homewrecker card. It was practically unblockable. Put Natalie on the phone now. Rebecca snapped an order through the speaker. The sweet wife routine was gone. She was now demanding obedience like royalty. Benjamin shot me a look, silently asking what I wanted to do. I didn't move a muscle. I just looked back at him. Then I slowly shook my head. Argue with her? Not a chance. Would just evolve into a screaming match. And I refused to drag myself down to her level of the gutter. Mr. Carter, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise perfectly. It seems this is a domestic dispute. Since that is the case, Please process my resignation. As for my stolen compensation, my lawyers will be in touch with your legal department. I turned on my heel and he called out my name, his voice a cracked, desperate sound that fell flat against the heavy silence of the room. Natalie, wait. Please. Just let me. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow my pace. I pushed open the heavy mahogany door, stepping out of the suffocating mahogany-paneled inner sanctum of the CEO and into the open-plan office of Apex Tax Executive Suite. The air out here is lighter, but only slightly. My colleagues were bustling about, clutching tablets and rushing to meetings, completely oblivious to the fact that the foundation of the company was currently cracking right down the middle just a few feet away. I walked straight to my desk, my movements fluid and deliberate. I didn't pack frantically. I grabbed my trench coat, my personal laptop, and a small leather-bound notebook that contained 5 years of my life, strategies, late-night breakthroughs, and notes on clients who trusted me far more than they trusted the name on the building. Natalie, my assistant, Chloe, asked, looking up from her dual screens with a frown. You have the quarterly review with the Vanguard Group at 3 o'clock. Do you need me to print the updated slides? Cancel it, Chloe. I said, my voice steady and quiet. In fact, clear my schedule for the rest of the year. She blinked, her pen hovering in midair. Are you going on leave? I'm leaving. I corrected gently. I offered her a small, genuine smile. Perhaps the only genuine thing left in this office. Take care of yourself, Chloe. You're too good for this place. Before she could process the words, I turned and walked toward the elevators. The doors slid open immediately, as if the building itself was eager to usher me out. As the metal doors shut, capturing a final glimpse of the sleek, glass and steel lobby of Apex Tech, I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 5 years. The descent from the 50th floor was silent. When I stepped out into the brisk winter air of the city, the chill hit my face, sharp and clean. I pulled my coat tighter around myself, took out my phone, and dialed a number I had saved under a simple, unassuming name, Jonathan. He answered on the second ring. Natalie. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. How did the bonus conversation go? It didn't. I said, walking toward the subway station. They stole it, Jonathan. Or rather, Rebecca did, with Andrew's help. It's in her private account. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the rustle of papers, followed by the distinct sound of a pen being clicked. When Jonathan spoke again, his tone had shifted from friendly colleague to the razor-sharp federal litigator he was. Tell me you didn't yell. I resigned on the spot. I gave Benjamin my letter, told him my lawyers would be in touch, and walked out. Excellent. Jonathan murmured, and I could practically hear the grin in his voice. A clean break. No emotional outbursts, no threats they can use to paint you as hostile. Do you have the pay stub? Downloaded and saved on 3 different external drives. Along with the bank notification showing the $600 deposit and the speakerphone conversation, Andrew confessed to the transfer on speakerphone in front of me. Benjamin called him. Andrew thought he was doing Benjamin a favor by routing my money to Rebecca's account to safeguard it from me. My God. Jonathan laughed softly, though it was a cold, clinical sound. They really are amateurs, aren't they? They've handed us a slam-dunk case of wage theft, wire fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty on a silver platter. Come to my office. Let's draft the demand letter. Jonathan's office was located in a historic brownstone in the legal district, a stark contrast to the sterile, hyper-modern high-rise I had just abandoned. Inside, the walls were lined with leather-bound books and the air smelled of old paper and rich espresso. He poured me a cup of black coffee and set a thick yellow legal pad on the desk between us. Here's where we stand, Jonathan began, leaning back in his leather chair. Apex Tech has breached your employment contract in the most egregious way possible. By withholding your contractually obligated bonus, which is clearly documented on your pay stub, they have not only violated labor laws, but they have also effectively nullified any restrictive covenants in your contract. I looked up from my coffee. You mean the non-compete? Exactly, Jonathan said, pointing his pen at me. Your non-compete clause dictated that you couldn't work for a competitor or solicit Apex clients for 12 months post-departure. But because they breached the contract first by committing outright theft, that non-compete is completely dead. You are a free agent, Natalie. And more importantly, you can take whoever you want with you. A slow, calculating warmth spread through my chest. 5 years. I had poured my soul into Apex Tech. I had built the operations department from scratch. I knew the pain points of every major client. I knew that the Vanguard Group, which accounted for nearly 40% of Apex's annual recurring revenue, had stayed with the firm solely because of my team's flawless execution. If Vanguard leaves, I murmured, Apex's valuation drops by half. Benjamin's upcoming Series D funding round will collapse. Then, let's make sure they know you're no longer there to keep the ship afloat, Jonathan said smoothly. But first, we hit them where it hurts. I'm sending a formal demand letter to Apex's legal counsel by 5 o'clock today. We demand the immediate release of the $599,400 plus interest, along with a formal apology and a severance package equal to 1 year's salary. If they refuse, we file a public lawsuit in federal court for wage theft and wire fraud. Benjamin will try to settle quietly, I noted. He can't let the board find out about this. If the board realizes his wife is using the company payroll as her personal bank account, they'll oust him as CEO. Then he'd better pay up quickly, Jonathan replied. But knowing men like Benjamin, he'll try to find a way to make this disappear without admitting fault. Let's see how long he can keep his head above water. By the next morning, the storm had officially made landfall. My phone had been ringing incessantly since 8 a.m. Benjamin's name flashed on the screen over and over again. I ignored every single call, letting them roll to voicemail. When he realized I wasn't going to pick up, the text messages started. Natalie, please call me. This is a massive misunderstanding. I've already initiated the transfer to get your funds back. We can resolve this. Natalie, we need you for the Vanguard meeting today. They're asking for you. Let's talk like professionals. Don't do this, Natalie. Don't ruin your career over a personal dispute. I read the texts with a detached curiosity. A personal dispute, he called it. His wife had stolen over $500,000 of my earned compensation. His finance director had committed wire fraud to facilitate it, and he still had the audacity to frame it as a personal dispute. Around noon, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It wasn't from Benjamin. It was an all-staff email sent from an encrypted external address, but the sender's name was listed as an anonymous well-wisher. I opened it and my stomach tightened. The email had been sent to the entire executive team, the board of directors, and several key project managers at Apex Tech. The subject line read, "The truth about Natalie's resignation." I scrolled down. The email was a vicious, carefully crafted character assassination. It claimed that I'd been engaging in an inappropriate, coercive relationship with Benjamin, attempting to extort him for money under the threat of exposing fabricated financial discrepancies. It painted me as a manipulative, greedy subordinate who had tried to destroy a happy marriage and was now throwing a temper tantrum because my extortion scheme had failed. She has consistently used her position to manipulate the CEO, demanding astronomical payouts that far exceed her value. When her advances were rejected, she resorted to threatening the firm's leadership. We urge the board to investigate her fraudulent claims before she does any further damage to Apex's reputation. I stared at the screen, the cold fury rising in my throat. Rebecca. She had realized that the truth was about to come out and, true to her nature, she had decided to strike first. She was using the oldest, dirtiest weapon in the patriarchal handbook. Labeling the successful woman a scheming temptress to discredit her professional standing. My phone rang again. This time it was Jonathan. "Have you seen the email?" he asked, his voice clipped and serious. "I just read it," I whispered, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "She's trying to ruin me, Jonathan, professionally. If this gets out to our clients, Natalie..." "Breathe," Jonathan interrupted, his tone shifting back to that calm, reassuring authority. "This is a gift." I blinked, confused. A gift? She just accused me of extortion and having an affair with my boss to the entire board. And she did it in writing, from an IP address that my digital forensics team can trace back to her home network within the hour, Jonathan said, a dangerous edge in his voice. She didn't just defame you to your colleagues, she sent it to the board of directors. That is tortious interference. She is actively attempting to destroy your professional reputation and your future earning capacity based on demonstrable lies. We are no longer just suing for your bonus, Natalie. We are suing for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and punitive damages. The anger in my chest crystallized into something hard and cold. What's the next step? I'm drafting an amended complaint right now, Jonathan said. And I think it's time you made a few phone calls of your own. Do you still have Charles Whitmore's personal number? Charles Whitmore was the managing director of the Vanguard Group. He was a conservative, no-nonsense investor who loathed corporate drama above all else. He had personally overseen the allocation of Vanguard's massive portfolio with Apex, and he had made it clear on multiple occasions that my operational oversight was the only reason he felt secure keeping his capital with the firm. I do, I said. Call him, Jonathan instructed. No mudslinging, just the facts. Tell him you've resigned, and let him draw his own conclusions. Charles, I said when he picked up. It's Natalie. Natalie, I was just about to call you. Charles's booming voice echoed through the speaker. I'm sitting in the conference room waiting for the 3 o'clock review, and I'm being told by some junior manager that you won't be attending. What's going on? Benjamin is acting like a nervous wreck, and his finance guy, Andrew, looks like he's about to throw up. I won't be attending, Charles, because I have resigned from Apex Tech effective immediately, I said calmly. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end. I could hear the distant murmur of his assistants in his New York office. Resigned? Charles's voice dropped, the warmth instantly evaporating. Why? You are the glue holding that entire operation together. Did Benjamin lose his mind? I cannot go into specific details due to ongoing legal proceedings, I said, choosing my words with absolute precision. But there has been a severe and irreconcilable breakdown in corporate governance and financial integrity at the executive level. It became impossible for me to continue operating under those conditions. Financial integrity? Charles seized on the words immediately. To an investor, those 2 words were a code red siren. Are you telling me Apex has a liquidity issue? Or is there something wrong with the books? The books are being manipulated to route funds to non-corporate private accounts, I said simply. That is all I can say at this time, but I wanted to call you personally to thank you for your trust over the last 5 years. It was an honor managing your portfolio. Wait, Natalie. Don't hang up, Charles said, his voice tense. If you're leaving, who is taking over our account? I believe they're assigning it to a junior manager under Andrew's supervision. Andrew? That sniveling little clerk. Charles let out a sharp, dry laugh. Absolutely not. I don't trust him to manage a lemonade stand, let alone our capital. Natalie, where are you going next? I'm taking a brief hiatus to let my legal team handle the transition, I said. But after that, I plan on starting my own firm. Keep me updated, Charles said without a second thought. The moment your new entity is registered, call me. In the meantime, I'm calling an emergency meeting with our investment committee. If the operational brain of Apex is gone and there's a whiff of financial malpractice, we are pulling our capital out today. Thank you, Charles, I said, keeping my voice entirely professional, though a thrill of quiet triumph raced through my veins. The first domino had fallen. 3 days later, the pressure cooker finally exploded. I was sitting in Jonathan's office reviewing the digital forensic report that linked the anonymous smear email directly to Rebecca's personal laptop when Jonathan's secretary intercommed him. Mr. Brooks, we have Benjamin Carter and his chief legal counsel on the line. They are requesting an emergency joint mediation session. They want to meet tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Jonathan looked at me, raising an eyebrow. What do you think, Natalie? Want to hear what they have to say? Only if Rebecca is there, I said, my voice deadpan. Jonathan smirked. You heard her, Lauren. Tell them we will agree to the mediation under one condition. Benjamin Carter, Rebecca Carter, and Andrew Collins must all be physically present in our conference room. No Zoom, no representatives. They show up or we file the lawsuit publicly at 10 o'clock. 10 minutes later, Lauren called back. They agreed. The morning of the mediation was overcast and freezing. Rain lashed against the high windows of Jonathan's conference room, casting long, gray shadows across the polished oak table. I arrived early, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and my hair pulled back into a sleek, severe bun. I looked like a woman who was ready to run a multi-billion-dollar enterprise or dismantle one. At exactly 9 a.m., the door opened. Benjamin entered first. He looked like he hadn't slept in 72 hours. His tie was slightly askew, his eyes were bloodshot, and the confident, commanding aura of the brilliant CEO had completely vanished. He looked withered, hollowed out by the realization of what he had allowed to happen. Behind him came Rebecca. She was dressed in an impeccably tailored, cream-colored coat, clutching an exotic leather handbag, her chin held high. She was trying desperately to project her usual regal, untouchable demeanor, but the slight tremor in her hands as she pulled out her chair gave her away. Andrew Collins slipped in last, practically hovering behind his own criminal defense attorney. He looked like a man walking toward a firing squad, his face pale and slick with sweat. They sat down on the opposite side of the table. The silence in the room was suffocating, heavy with the stench of ruin. "Thank you for meeting with us," Benjamin began, his voice raspy and thin. He looked directly at me, his eyes pleading. "Natalie, I want to apologize for everything. The money has been fully recovered. The $599,400 has been transferred back into an escrow account, and we are prepared to wire it to you immediately along with an additional, save it, Benjamin," Jonathan interrupted coldly, sliding a thick stack of documents across the table. "We aren't here to negotiate a simple wage dispute anymore. Your client," he said, glaring directly at Rebecca, engaged in a systematic, malicious campaign of defamation and tortious interference. She sent a highly defamatory, false email to Apex's board of directors and executive staff and attempting to ruin my client's career. That email was from an anonymous sender. Rebecca snapped, her voice shrill, though it lacked its usual confidence. "You have absolutely no proof that had anything to do with me." Jonathan didn't even blink. He slid a single piece of paper toward her. "This is a digital forensics report prepared by the cyber intelligence firm Mandiant," Jonathan said calmly. "It traces the metadata of that email directly to the residential IP address of your primary home in Greenwich. More specifically, it was sent from a MacBook Pro registered under your name using your personal iCloud account as a recovery backup. If we go to trial, federal subpoena power will allow us to seize that laptop within 48 hours. Would you like to revise your statement, Mrs. Carter?" Rebecca's face drained of color. She looked down at the document, her lips trembling. She turned to Benjamin, her voice rising in hysteria. "Benjamin, are you going to let them threaten me like this? Do something. Tell them to stop." Benjamin didn't look at her. He kept his eyes glued to the mahogany table. His jaw clenched so tightly a muscle in his cheek strove to burst through his skin. "I can't protect you from this, Rebecca," Benjamin whispered, his voice sounding entirely broken. "You stole from the company. You committed fraud. And then you lied to my face. I did it for us." She shrieked, finally dropping the mask of the elegant wife. She was taking too much. $600,000 for a worker bee? Do you know what people like her are? They are replaceable. I'm your wife. I deserve that lifestyle, not some young, aggressive girl who— "Shut up, Rebecca," Benjamin roared, slamming his fist onto the table. The force of the blow made the water glasses rattle. Rebecca gasped, recoiling into her chair as if she had been slapped. She stared at her husband in absolute shock. In their 10 years of marriage, he had never raised his voice to her. Benjamin slowly turned his head to look at me. His eyes were swimming with a chaotic mix of shame, grief, and a profound, agonizing regret. "Natalie," he said, his voice shaking. "Vanguard pulled their account yesterday afternoon. Charles Whitmore called a board meeting and withdrew all their capital. They cited a loss of confidence in corporate governance. Because of that, our Series D funding round has been frozen. Apex is facing a severe liquidity crisis. We might have to declare bankruptcy by the end of the month." I sat perfectly still, my expression blank, watching the collapse of the empire I had helped build. I felt a twinge of sadness for the company, but none for the man sitting across from me. He had allowed his personal weakness to dictate his professional responsibility. He had chosen to look the other way until the fire reached his own doorstep. "That is a tragedy, Mr. Carter," I said, using his formal title once again. "But it is a tragedy of your own making." "We want to settle," Benjamin's lawyer stepped in, his tone hurried and desperate. "We will pay the $600,000 bonus. We will pay an additional $2 million in damages for the defamation and breach of contract. We will issue a company-wide retraction of the anonymous email, stating that an internal investigation found the allegations to be completely false and malicious. In exchange, we require a full, unconditional non-disclosure agreement and a release of all claims against Apex Tech, Benjamin Carter, and Rebecca Carter." Jonathan looked at me, waiting for my signal. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the edge of the table. I looked at Rebecca, who was now quietly weeping into a silk handkerchief, and then at Andrew, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the floorboards. "I will accept the financial settlement," I said, my voice echoing clearly in the quiet room. $2. $6 million wired to my account by noon today. Benjamin's lawyer let out a visible sigh of relief. "Excellent. We will draft the NDA." "I'm not finished," I interrupted, my voice dropping an octave. "I will not sign a non-disclosure agreement." The room froze. "Natalie, please," Benjamin begged. "If this gets out, we are completely ruined." "The board will. The board already knows, Benjamin," I said coldly, "and the industry will soon know. I will not sign away my right to tell my story. I will not allow your wife to walk away from this thinking she merely lost a civil dispute. I want it on the record." I turned my gaze to Andrew. "And as for you, Andrew, your attorney has undoubtedly told you that wire fraud is a federal offense. I have already submitted a formal complaint to the Securities and Exchange Commission, along with the recording of your speakerphone confession." Andrew's defense attorney sighed, putting a hand on his client's trembling shoulder. "We are already preparing to cooperate with the authorities, Ms. Brooks." "Good," I said. I stood up, smoothing the front of my blazer. I looked down at the broken remnants of the leadership team of Apex Tech. "The wire transfer must clear by noon," I said to Benjamin's lawyer. "If the funds are not in my account by 12:01, Jonathan will file the public lawsuit and the press will have copies of the digital forensics report by lunch." Without waiting for response, I turned and walked out of the conference room. 2 weeks later, the press release was picked up by the major financial news. Apex Tech CEO steps down amid financial scandal. Vanguard Group pulls capital. The article detailed the abrupt resignation of Benjamin Carter following an internal investigation into unauthorized financial transactions involving a spouse and the director of finance, Andrew Collins, who is currently facing federal charges. The company's valuation had plummeted by over 60% and a restructuring firm had been called in to liquidate its remaining assets. I read the news sitting in my new office, a beautiful, light-filled space overlooking the harbor. The brass sign on the glass door read, "Brooks Operations Advisory." My phone buzzed. I picked it up to see a notification from my bank. The balance was vast, clean, and entirely mine. A moment later, the office line rang. My new assistant, whom I had hired away from Apex with a significant pay raise, spoke through the intercom. "Natalie, Charles Whitmore from the Vanguard Group is on line 1. He wants to discuss transitioning their entire North American operations portfolio to your new firm." I smiled, a warmth filling my chest that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with freedom. "Put him through," I said.